Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the final round of the Bermuda Schools debate competition. The motion for the debate today is, this House would hold parents responsible for the crimes of their children. The teams debating are Saltus Grammar School and Bermuda High School. Speaking for the proposition are Rebecca Dixon as the first speaker, Adam Kiki Charles as the second speaker, and Jakari Brimmer-Landy as the third speaker. The reply will be done by Adam Kiki Charles. Please welcome them. Speaking for the opposition are Anifa Burke as the first speaker, Aliyah Ahad as the second speaker, Christy O'Doherty as the third speaker, and the reply will be done by Aliyah Ahad. Please welcome them. The adjudicators for this debate are Fawzia Fahy, Jennifer Howarth, Christy Hunter, Tim Smith, and Gladstone Thompson. Please welcome them. Timing the debate today is Trevor Leach. The times for main speeches in this debate are 1 bell at 1 minute, 1 bell at 4 minutes, and 2 bells at 5 minutes. The first and last minute of each main speech is protected from points of information. For the replies, the times are 1 bell at 2 minutes and 2 bells at 3 minutes. No points of information are allowed in the replies. As world rules allow points of information, no interjections are permitted between the teams or from the audience. Any points of order will be ruled on by the adjudicators. At the end of each speech, a period of 2 minutes will be allowed for the adjudicators to make their notes. At the end of that time, a bell will be rung to show the debate will restart. If adjudicators finish before the 2-minute bell, I will introduce the next speaker after they have indicated to me that they are ready. It is now my pleasure to welcome Rebecca Dixon, the first speaker of the proposition.
Good evening, Madam Speaker, Mr. Timekeeper, honorable opponents, honorable colleagues, and members of the floor. We are here today to debate the motion, this House would hold parents responsible for the crimes of their children. We as the proposition strongly agree with this motion. We define a parent as someone who is legally accountable for a child and is the lawful or biological guardian of the child. We define responsible as morally and physically accountable for the actions of their child, and we define crimes as acts against the law, anything from truancy to first-degree murder. We define children as people who are under the age of 18. The proposition believes that there are 3 issues which suggest parents should be responsible for the crimes of their children. 1, there is already a global precedent set. 2, children are influenced by what they see and hear. 3, rehabilitation of the parents addresses the root of the problem and not just the symptoms. I will be speaking about how and why we plan to implement these measures and how there is a precedent set around the world. My second speaker will be speaking about how children are influenced by what they see and hear and how rehabilitation of the parents addresses the root of the problem, not just the symptoms. We plan to implement this by having individual and family counseling, community service, restitution, and fines, all of which will be done by the parent and the child to help nurture a better relationship between both parent and child and make the parent responsible. We are going to do this because once the parent is responsible by law, it will cut down on violent premeditated crimes that are taken and committed by juveniles, because parents will be proactive earlier. Crimes like truancy will warrant counseling and perhaps a fine, but crimes like first-degree murder will warrant time in detention centers and counseling.
Point of information.
Accepted?
Wouldn't you agree that most crimes committed by youth aren't premeditated?
No, I would disagree with that, because if you look at studies conducted by Cambridge University, they clearly show that crimes committed by people between the ages of 11 and 18, they are, in fact, they can possess logical thought and can come up with premeditated crimes. By implementing these laws, we are attacking the problem and not just the symptoms. As a global precedent is set, ladies and gentlemen, if we look at countries all around the world, there are juvenile systems established in Singapore, England, France, Italy, India, China, and Bermuda. And most of these countries already have parental responsibility acts. Most of these countries encourage rehabilitation of the minor and of the parents. If we look at acts, accept it. One moment, please. If we look at acts in England in 2003, the Parental Responsibility Act, these acts show that clearly this is already working. Accept it.
Do you have statistics showing that these acts around the world actually do work?
Many statistics provided by different universities show that these acts have worked and that there are 45% less from the Home Office in the United States. 45% of crimes are not committed anymore as they were back before the Parental Responsibility Acts were established. Studies from Cambridge University also show that children under the age of 18 are not physically, mentally, or emotionally developed as adults, and they cannot make decisions on their own and independently of their family members. They do not have the mental capacity to know what is right and wrong all the time, and they only repeat and mimic actions that have been modeled by their parents. As my second speaker will go on to tell you, they are influenced by what they see and what they hear. That is why, for the reasons that my colleagues have stated, for the reasons that I have stated, and the reasons that my colleagues will go on to state, we believe that this motion shall and will stand. Thank you.
It is now my pleasure to welcome Anifa Burke, the first speaker for the opposition.
Good evening, Madam Speaker, Madam Timekeeper, honorable judges, worthy opponents, esteemed colleagues, and members of the floor. The motion before you today is that this House would hold parents responsible for the crimes of their children. We, as the opposition, confidently disagree with this motion. However, the opposition does agree with the definition put forward by the proposition today. Our case line is divided into 3 sections. Firstly, why holding parents responsible will not work. Secondly, external causes of child crime. And lastly, the best solution to this problem of child crime. As the first speaker, I will be highlighting to you today why holding parents responsible will not work. My second speaker will discuss the external causes that may influence the child's behavior, meaning that the parents are not the only influence. Also, a better solution, prevention, intervention, and alternative ways of combating child crime. Before I continue with my case, I'd like to address a few points made by the honorable proposition. They said that laws are already globally set. Are we going to follow them willy-nilly because it's worldwide? Also, they said that many stats show that it has worked, and there's a direct link between parental laws and the increase in child crime rates. However, we have found that there is no real way of measuring this, and that these statistics are flawed. In order for the proposition to prove to you today that this law should be passed, ladies and gentlemen, the proposition, not right now, please, the proposition needs to show us today how holding parents responsible will reduce child crime rates. And we, the opposition, will show you that there is no direct link between parental responsibility and child crime rates. I will now go on to discuss our first argument on how parental responsibility laws are not working. Certain governments, for example, Canada and the United Kingdom, already have these laws. However, the child criminal rates continue to increase. The United Kingdom has seen the negative effects of punishing parents for the actions of their children. And in December of last year, BBC did a study that showed that parents were already paying for their children's truancy. However, the amount of children skipping school has not decreased. Therefore, parents paying fines has not proved to us today that it will decrease child crime. Which leads me back to the point. Accepted.
We've shown that there are other ways, instead of only fines, that we would have parents responsible, that we would hold parents responsible.
That's a great point, which I will discuss later in my case. Which leads us back to the point of why hold parents responsible when children will repeat the same action every time. There is no evidence to prove that parental responsibility laws are decreasing the crime rates. Paul Alexander, who has done a study on parental responsibility laws in Toledo, Ohio, has stated that he finds no evidence that punishing parents has any effect whatsoever on the curbing of juvenile delinquency. Penalties on parents means breaking up families. Fining means depriving children and families of sustenance. Yes?
Don't you feel that a proactive solution is needed in order to curb child crimes?
Yes, so the opposition does agree that there are proactive ways, which my second speaker will go on to introduce: prevention, intervention, and other alternative means of fighting the child crime. So what would holding parents responsible solve? It will solve nothing, ladies and gentlemen. If anything, it causes more problems than anything. This leads me on to my next point. By holding them, parents' responsibility laws do not solve child crime and causes more problems for the child and his or her family. If a parent is charged, there is decreased trust between parent and child. If you don't have trust, ladies and gentlemen, let's face it, you will not have a relationship with your parent. And it will also increase tension, abuse, hatred between parents and children. There's resentment because a parent has to be locked up for the actions of a child, leading to more crime because there's no comfort at home, because children will go out and find other ways of comforting themselves. When The Guardian, a journal in the United Kingdom, on May 15, 2002, investigated the case of an incarcerated mother that was incarcerated for her children skipping school, it was found that other family members were inconvenienced because the girls had nowhere to live. This investigation proves to us, ladies and gentlemen, that it affects the livelihoods of families. By holding them financially responsible, we are targeting a socioeconomic group. Many already have problems supporting their families and are not able to spend that quality time that you are suggesting that they need. Now we are going to charge them because their children are misbehaving. Children can also use this as an advantage to deliberately get their parents into trouble. Let's face it, if I were a troubled teen and I hated my mother and it was as easy as shoplifting, then why not? Existing laws have the right idea by holding children accountable and responsible for their crimes, which my second speaker will pick up in her speech. The opposition has proved to you today, ladies and gentlemen, and will continue to prove why this motion must fall. Thank you.
It is now my pleasure to welcome Adam Kiki Charles, the second speaker for the proposition.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Crime is an issue that faces many societies. However, when a child is found guilty of a crime, it causes us to wonder, why? When a crime is committed by a child, as defined by my first speaker, it reflects on what they have been predominantly taught at home. This is why we, the proposition, would hold parents responsible for the crimes of their children. We, the proposition, believe, as my first speaker has stated, that there are three factors which suggest parents should be responsible for the crimes of their children. The first is that there's already a global precedent. The second is that children are influenced by what they see and hear. And the third is that rehabilitation of the parents and the children helps to solve the root of the problem, not just the symptoms. I, as a second speaker for the proposition, will discuss how children are influenced by what they hear and see, and that rehabilitation will help to address the root of the problems, not just the symptoms. Before I begin, I would like to rebut a few points made by the honorable opposition. The opposition in her protected minute brought up a point about parents and children having trust in one another, and how if we send parents off to jails, we won't allow this type of relationship to build. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we never ever said that we would lock up parents. We said that we would hold them responsible, but this doesn't necessarily mean putting them behind bars. We feel that this is not the solution, not accepted. We feel that you can hold them responsible in the different ways which my first speaker has stated, and such as having them go to counseling, having them participate in community service along with their children. No, thank you. Now, she also made a point about disadvantaging financially people who are in financial need. Now, we, the proposition, feel that in these instances, judges will have the opportunity to closely examine situations and find the best solution for these different families. Now on with my case. The proposition believes that no child is an island. They learn and reason based on what they see and hear. A Center for Drug Rehabilitation says that parents who abuse alcohol and other illegal substances increase the likelihood that their child will use these substances by 3 times. The study also shows that parents who are heavy drinkers have a high chance of having children who are heavy drinkers, who drink more frequently and often drink alone. We, the proposition, see that parents have such an influential role on their child's behavior. This is one of the determining factors in the proposition's case today. Governments target parents in anti-smoking ads and also safe sex ads because they realize that they have the most influence over their children, and that through this influence they can enact change in their children. If you look at the example of Conor McCready, I'm sure you've all seen this probably on CNN, a child of 8 years old weighing 218 pounds. This is 4 times the average weight of a child his age. This case in the UK is now being examined, and his parents are possibly going to be prosecuted in order to ensure his safety, because they put him in a hazardous situation. They allowed him, just a moment, they allowed him to consume food and get to the point where it could actually be damaging to his health. Now, we, the proposition, would propose that we take measures in order to help his parents realize what they are doing to him. Accepted.
I believe you are talking about neglect from parents, not actual child crimes.
Thank you very much. That really does tie into this, because neglect is one of the reasons why we feel parents should be held responsible. It is because they are neglectful that they allow their children to behave in this manner at times, and because of this, their children can actually have problems and cause crime. Now, back to the whole point of rehabilitation. We feel that punishment solely against the child is ineffective. If you cannot change a child's environment, you cannot change their behavior. Parents need to change in order for courts to effectively be successful in influencing a child's behavior. Now, the ways that my first speaker has proposed, such as having counseling for the parents and forcing them to actually participate in these acts, would hold them responsible and ensure that they actually take the necessary measures in order to promise that their children are safe and do not commit crimes. Now, this leads us back to our biggest argument, which is that by holding parents accountable, you solve the root cause of child crime problems. Now, by changing the environment, you influence the child's behavior. You change their behavior and you allow them to grow productively. This will eventually cut down on child crime. It provides a proactive solution and helps to deter crime from increasing, because parents actually take into account every time that they come into court that there is something that needs to be changed. It provides us with a safer society. That's why we, the proposition, believe that we should tackle the root cause of child crime and stop it before it escalates. Thank you.
It is now my pleasure to welcome Ulia Ahad, second speaker of the opposition.
Protocol having already been established, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As you've heard, the motion before this House is that this House would hold parents responsible for the crimes of their children, and we, the opposition, absolutely disagree. Our case line is divided into a three-pronged argument. Firstly, we have our simple, yet most important, it doesn't work argument. Second, external factors. And thirdly, our best solution, which is prevention, intervention, and alternatives. Before I begin with my constructive case, I'd like to give a rebuttal to points raised by the Honorable Proposition. The Honorable Proposition told us that random studies by random universities agree with this motion. Well, frankly, we, the Proposition, aren't convinced. We would like some actual figures from some actual studies from real schools that prove that this motion works. Secondly, the Honorable Proposition told us that no child is an island, and that they are affected by things, external influences, which I will go on to later in my case. One moment, please. Actually accepted.
You mentioned that my first speaker gave you random facts, but from random universities. But I'm not sure if you misheard it, but she clearly stated that her facts came from Cambridge University.
Thank you. Actually, she said that her facts from Cambridge talked about crime reduction in general, nothing specific to parent laws. Now on with my constructive case, which is external factors. Parents are not by any stretch of the imagination, sorry Mom, the sole or even most prominent influence on today's youth or any day's youth. A small survey that we did at BHS, it's not scientific, but just so we had an idea, we found that we only spend 10% of our waking time with active participation with our parents. The other 90%, well, 40% of it is spent at school. An additional 9% outside of school is spent with our friends. How is holding parents responsible going to decrease the influence of these things? There are only the same number of hours in the day. The message must come from the peers, the media, and the school, who have the most influence on the youth.
Point of information?
Not accepted at this time, thank you. A United Kingdom green paper entitled Every Child Matters from 2003 identified the ages of 10 to 17 as being most at risk for crime. So we're not talking about little Billy on mommy's lap. We're talking about preteens and teenagers who have their own personalities and have responsibility. The Canadian Youth Criminal Act, passed in 2002, says it best, when by law the sentence must help the youth accept responsibility for breaking the law, not punishing the parents, making the child see what they have done wrong. Now to the next part of my argument, prevention and intervention. Most countries already have laws, already have laws on par with Bermuda's Young Offenders Act. Accepted.
The proposition would just like to make it clear that we by no means will not punish children, but we feel that their parents should be a part of their rehabilitation.
Thank you. So you're saying you're going to punish the ones who have done the thing wrong, and then you're going to punish another body just so they know that it was wrong. Well, this doesn't make any sense. If you're already punishing those who have committed the crime, why would you go and punish another external body? Back with my constructive case. As I said, most countries already have laws on par with Bermuda's Young Offenders Act. Slapping another Band-Aid law on my forehead when I trip down the stairs is not going to solve the problem. Slapping a Band-Aid law on my mother's forehead is even more ridiculous when I'm the one who tripped down the stairs. What the Honorable Proposition should do is put a railing or tell me to slow down so I don't fall in the first place. A 1996 Rand Corporation report cited in a June 1997 issue of Juvenile Justice magazine indicated that early intervention programs can prevent 250 crimes per 1 million spent, while the same amount spent in prisons only reduces 60 such crimes per year. 60, 250. Band-Aid, railing. Punishing parents, intervention. I think it speaks for itself. Also, our best solution, ladies and gentlemen, is the Criminal Injuries Compensation Board, which exists in Bermuda and several other countries, such as the UK, the US, and Canada. Usually in the UK, it's called the Compensating Victims of Violent Crime. And what happens is they pay money to victims where it would have been a successful civil lawsuit, but because the offender has no money, they can't. What we want to do is extend the scope of it and add a little twist. We want it to include victims of juvenile crime, because we believe that the victims deserve it, ladies and gentlemen, and then it would turn into an almost loan, and the juvenile, once they become an adult, would have to repay the compensation board over a 5 to 10 year period. This punishes the child, is fair to the victim, and doesn't penalize the parent, which we've already showed makes absolutely no sense. The proposition has to prove to you today that holding parents responsible actually decreases crime. They must show you that the laws in place show that parental responsibility actually works. They have to prove to you that holding parents responsible will not create more problems than it solved. Ladies and gentlemen, the proposition has done none of this. The umbilical cord is cut, ladies and gentlemen, and it was discarded along with the proposition's case. Thank you.
It is now my pleasure to welcome Jakari Brimmer-Landy, the third speaker for the proposition.
Good evening, adjudicators, members of the floor, the audience, and my fellow debaters. The motion before us today is this House believes that parents should be held responsible for the crimes of their children, and we as the proposition, ladies and gentlemen, strongly and firmly agree with this motion. As third speaker, I will be giving a clear rebuttal of the opposition's main points. Our case line, ladies and gentlemen, as I would like to reinforce this as it has been throughout this debate, is that there is already a precedent in place, ladies and gentlemen, and that children are influenced by what they see and hear, which most of this, ladies and gentlemen, comes from the home base, from parents, ladies and gentlemen. And also, the rehabilitation of parents address the root of the problem, not just the symptom. My case is going to be divided into the following sections. Why we believe that charging fines and locking up parents will not work already, and who this affects, as the first speaker mentioned, and why holding parents responsible will not work, as the second speaker of the proposition mentioned. Now I'm with my case. Ladies and gentlemen, the first thing that the first speaker of the opposition said was that there's no way of measuring this. Statistics are flawed. Ladies and gentlemen, she never told us why these statistics are flawed or how these statistics are flawed. But we, as the proposition, do not see these statistics as flawed because we see it as clearly obvious. If before you introduce a law, 50% of juveniles are committing crimes, and then you introduce the law, and 25% or less than that of juveniles are committing crimes, obviously the law has worked.
Point of information.
I do not accept. So we, ladies and gentlemen, would like the opposition to explain to us why this law wouldn't work. Ladies and gentlemen, she also talked about fines insistently and how we're going to fine parents and how we're going to lock parents up. And she said a whole bunch of facts, ladies and gentlemen, that we as the proposition did not mention. We never said that we were going to lock parents up, ladies and gentlemen, because we have already seen the flaw in this problem. What we are trying to do is let the parents make...
Point of information.
I accept.
So what do you do when the parents refuse to pay the fine?
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, is another point from the opposition that we have not made. We have not said that we are going to be fining parents willy-nilly. That is the point I have just made, that is a point, ladies and gentlemen, that we did not say.
Point of information.
I did not accept. She said that, well, if we lock parents up, we're not solving the problem because then we're not letting the children spend more time with their parents. However, ladies and gentlemen, we saw that flaw already. We did not just lock parents up. We want to solve not just the symptom of the problem, the root of the problem. And we, ladies and gentlemen, feel that the root of the problem, one of the causes, is parents not spending enough time. And we feel if the parents know that they are going to be held responsible for these actions, that then they will take
Point
a
of
bigger part of the
information.
child's life. I did not accept. She also said, ladies and gentlemen, that she talked about how punishing children, and as I already mentioned, sending them to jail. But we said, when we defined this case, that we were holding parents responsible, we defined it as morally and physically accountable. We never said, ladies and gentlemen, that by holding them responsible, we were sending them to jail or fining them. In fact, we gave you other alternatives that we feel will work better.
Point of information.
Such as, I accept.
Wouldn't you count that as physically, though? Sending them to jail?
No, I wouldn't, ladies and gentlemen, because if you physically punish something, that could be something as slapping the parents, and we are not going to go out and slap the parents. Ladies and gentlemen, what we are trying to do is we're trying to get the parents to counseling to solve not just the symptom, the root of the problem. She also, ladies and gentlemen, said that fines don't work, but as I already mentioned, we know that fines don't work. Ladies and gentlemen, now we move on to what the second speaker said. One of the first things that the second speaker said was that our facts weren't good enough, and she talked about how she gave you random facts from universities. I accept.
Okay. You said that you believe that it's the root of the problem that the parents are not spending time with their children. Isn't counseling going to take away the time from the parents spending time with their children?
No, ladies and gentlemen, she has completely missed the point. What we said is peer counseling, i.e. parents and child will sit in a room and talk to the counselor together. We are not separating the parents and child, so I do not accept your point because you have completely missed what I was trying to say. Ladies and gentlemen, we feel, as I was saying what the second speaker said, she talked about how our facts from Cambridge University weren't good enough, but then she, ladies and gentlemen, ran and gave you some unscientific fact about how much time children might be spending with their parents. We feel that that is very hypocritical, ladies and gentlemen. She also said, she gave this full speech, this lovely speech about children falling down the stairs and tripping. But ladies and gentlemen, the government, I'll use her speech as an analogy, the government has tried to warn them. If you look on the roads and on the stairs, there are constant signs that tell you, slow down. But the problem, ladies and gentlemen, is that children they're not paying attention to the signs. So that we feel that the parents knew that the mother was going to be held responsible for her falling down the stairs, that maybe, ladies and gentlemen, her mother would spend more time with her at home and talk about how you shouldn't run because you might fall down the stairs. Ladies and gentlemen, we feel that if parents knew that they were going to be held responsible and some of their free time would be taken up, then, ladies and gentlemen, they would take a bigger role in that child's life and work harder with that child so that the child knows the laws of the land, and, ladies and gentlemen, so the child will not break those laws. Then she also talked about, ladies and gentlemen, she also talked about parents are just another external factor, and that we'll just be punishing another external factor. However, we, the proposition, see a fatal flaw with this, ladies and gentlemen, as your parents in your life are just not another external factor, ladies and gentlemen. Your parents are probably your biggest role models in life. So we feel, as the proposition, that this case must and will stand. Thank you.
It is now my pleasure to welcome Christy O'Doherty, the third speaker for the opposition.
As protocol has already been established, good evening. The motion before us today is this House would hold parents responsible for the crimes of their children, and we as the opposition firmly disagree with this motion. I would like to remind the judges today of our case line. It is divided into a three-pronged argument. Firstly, our most simple yet most important, our "it doesn't work" argument. Secondly, our externals argument. And thirdly, the best solution, which includes prevention, intervention, and alternatives. As my first honorable speaker has already said, I will be making a clear rebuttal to the proposition's case today and summarizing our own points. My first speaker has explained to you "it doesn't work" argument, ladies and gentlemen, because the fact of holding parents responsible will not, ladies and gentlemen, will not prevent child crime. She has made the point that there is no link that bad parents equals bad kids, good parents equals good kids. The parents actually can't control their actions or influence them because, as my second speaker has already pointed out, there are other external causes such as their peers, one moment please, and school. Accept it.
If you teach a child to do something from the time they're young, can you honestly say that you have no impact on how that child behaves in the future?
Ladies and gentlemen, this is true, but you must keep in mind, where do they get these lessons from? Not just the parents, ladies and gentlemen. The school, your friends, the internet, the media. It is not just your parents, which is the point the opposition is trying to make. She also explained a lemmings argument, which is the fact that just because India, Singapore, UK does it, does not mean we have to follow it. For example, ladies and gentlemen, you had the eugenics law, which said that there is a perfect race. And you had the US agreeing with it, Canada agreeing with it, the UK agreed with it. We now know from Nazi Germany that this idea is completely ridiculous. This shows you, just because the other country does it, does not mean we have to jump off the bridge with them. Thank you. She also mentioned that there's a law in place called the Young Offenders Act, which shows that neglecting parents, if there is a direct link, the neglection of parents, it resulted the crime the kid committed, then yes, they should pay the fine or should go to counseling or should be put in jail, etc., etc. This shows, ladies and gentlemen, that this law, this idea, is already in place. Therefore, this motion is not necessary. Because the laws in Bermuda, this law was made in 1950, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, it's already in place. Why must we make a new one?
Point of information.
Not accepted at this time. My second speaker also mentioned external causes. Ladies and gentlemen, the survey she had just was to make the point that 10% of a regular BHS student spends their time with their parents. It is just to summarize to the proposition that, look, 90% of the child's time is not spent with the children. Therefore, how can the proposition argue that they are the most influenced, which is part of their case line, not accepted at this moment? If 90% of my time is not spent with my children, is not spent with my parents, then how is that influential, ladies and gentlemen? Therefore, this point that the proposition is making is completely invalid. She also then went to explain preventions and interventions and alternatives. Prevention and intervention would be counseling, like youth offending teams already in place in the UK, the citizenship GCSE, which is already placed in the UK. Therefore, we agree with the proposition that counseling, etc., should be put in place. However, for the child, because it is the child's fault for actually committing the crime. Also, the proposition needs to prove to us today that holding parents responsible for the child's crime will reduce the crime of the children, which we have proven to you is not the case. That laws around the world actually do work, which we have proved, my first speaker has proven to you is not the case. That alternatives is not the best solution, which we have proved to you is not the case. Also, that it solves more problem than it causes, which my first speaker has pointed out to you. The proposition's main case was that it had global support, which I have just knocked down with a Lenning's argument. That is the most influential, which I have just knocked down with our external causes argument, because 10% of our time is spent with our parents. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not enough time to get the influence that is needed. Also, that rehabilitation is necessary, which we agree with. However, that is the parents who are necessary. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, the points that the first speaker, the second speaker, and the third speaker has pointed out, saying that, as the third speaker said, that it solves the root of the problem. Ladies and gentlemen, the reason we have the best solution argument is because it does not solve the root of the problem. The root of the problem is the child crime around the world. We believe that our case, now, ladies and gentlemen, we know our case has proved to you that this motion must not fall, this motion must fall, and therefore it is your responsibility to make that happen. Thank you.
It is now time for replies. The opposition replies first and is followed by the proposition. Please let me remind you that there are no points of information during the reply speeches. Please welcome back Aliyah Ahad to reply for the opposition.
Good evening again, ladies and gentlemen. The Honorable Proposition today has given you a very flawed case. Their three main points were as follows: that we should do this because there's a global precedent, that children are affected by what they see and hear, and that rehabilitation attacks the problems, not just the solution. Well, ladies and gentlemen, my honorable first and third speakers have already knocked down these cases. So what if it's done in other countries? So what if it's done everywhere else in the world? Eugenics was a scientific study. That's where they measured people, and if you didn't fit the right measurements, then they sterilized you. That was a scientific study, and it held no water, just as the proposition's case. Also, their point about children being affected by what they see and hear. We agree, ladies and gentlemen. We know that they're affected by what they see and hear. We were children not too long ago. But what we are saying is that we don't spend most of our time with our parents. Unlike the Honorable Proposition, who thinks that we put posters of our parents on our walls, we don't. We do media figures and pop stars, not our parents. Sorry, Mom, again. They also said that rehabilitation attacks the problems, not just the solutions. How is it attacking the problems if it's only done after the crime has been achieved? What we, the proposition, are saying is intervention and prevention, not reactionary policies. The Honorable Proposition has also told us that the Home Office said there were 45% less crimes after this law had been put into place. Well, 45% crimes in general does not mean that it's specifically related to this here motion, and therefore does not mean that it works. They have still failed to provide us with actual studies from actual universities other than one Cambridge that says that crime goes down. Okay, well, what does that really mean, ladies and gentlemen? They've also said that no child is an island, and we agree. They said that drinkers have heavy influences on kids, but there's nothing that says exactly that bad parents have bad kids. Oprah, she was abused, and now she's amazing. Jeffrey Dahmer, he cut people up and ate them, and he came from a perfectly good home. Also, they said that parents need to spend more time with kids, and this law will do that. Not when the parents still work 1, 2, 3 jobs, and they have no time to spend with their kids. They also Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, it is clear. The proposition today, for this motion to make any kind of sense, they had to prove to us that parental responsibility laws actually reduce crime, that in countries where they're done, they have reduced crime, that our best solution isn't going to work, and also that it doesn't cause more problems than it solves, as my first speaker has already said, with parents who are angry at their kids, they might want to abuse them more, a number of things. Ladies and gentlemen, it's ridiculous how much information we, the opposition, have. And for these reasons that I've stated, that my first speaker said it, my third speaker said, this motion is absolutely ridiculous, unnecessary, and will fall. Thank you.
The final speaker will be Adam Kiki Charles to reply for the proposition and close the debate. Please welcome him.
Good evening once again, ladies and gentlemen. From the very beginning of this debate, the proposition told you that they believe 3 things. That parents should be held responsible for the crimes of their children because 1, there's a global precedent, 2, children are influenced by what they see and hear, and 3, that rehabilitation of parents helps to solve the root problem and not just the symptoms. Now, in these 3 areas, we saw some pretty unique clash between the proposition and opposition. The opposition had to say to our global precedent argument that it won't work. To the argument that children are influenced by what they see, that there are also other external causes, and to our wanting to rehabilitate parents and children, that there are other solutions which could help to achieve the same means. Now, we, the proposition, feel that our arguments actually stood up much more strongly to theirs. Now, I will address each of these in turn throughout the rest of my speech. The first point of there's already a global precedent versus it doesn't already work. Well, we, the proposition, feel that they've only asserted that it doesn't work. They haven't given us any concrete facts. The fact that we said that there are 45% less crimes, this fact coming from Cambridge, after these laws are implemented, proves this. Taking facts from a common room, facts that they themselves brought to us, doesn't prove anything. We feel that we have won this argument because they say that these laws are ineffective. But we believe that why have they been put in place in the first place, and why are they still in place in countries such as China, the UK, France, Italy, and Singapore? Obviously, they are and have proven to be successful. Now, to the argument about parents being primarily influential in their children's lives versus the external influences on children, we feel that from the moment you are born, you are influenced by what your parents decide you should do. They raise you. They influence all the ways you operate, the way that your mind works. We feel that they are the primary influence within your lives, no matter when you go to school, because you learn everything you do initially from them, and you carry that with you throughout the rest of your lives. Finally, our solution of rehabilitation versus their solution, there are other solutions such as the early intervention, and prevention. Well, ladies and gentlemen, why can't we couple all these solutions? We feel that you need to start, however, with the parents because they have the primary and biggest influence over their children. What they have proposed actually coincides with our argument. Now, what it really comes down to is what we class responsibility as. Now, let me remind you of my first speaker's definition of this, that parents should be morally and physically accountable for the actions of their children. Now, we, the proposition, feel that this has held throughout this debate, that they should be accountable for the actions of their children, that if they are accountable, this helps to prevent crime. And we have shown you this throughout all our speeches, and we would like to close in saying that we believe that by holding parents accountable for the crimes of their children, you tackle the root cause, not just the symptoms. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for the adjudicators to make their decision. The adjudicators make this independently and place their individual score sheets in an envelope provided, which they will hand to me. They then go outside to discuss any comments they want to make, and one judge will announce the decision on behalf of the panel and make any comments. I now wish to welcome Gladstone Thompson to announce the decision and make comments on behalf of the panel.
Good evening, everyone. I think we can all see that we were in for a really good treat today and that our students did an exceptional job. Let's give them all a hand. Really, really good job. As Trevor had stated earlier, that there are actual rules that judges have to go by. And the most difficult thing, I think, for the audience is that because you don't have a criterion in front of you and you've really had the pleasure of just listening in, you've decided that maybe this time this team has won or this team has won. You've all judged it, and you know who's won. So when we decide who's won, and it goes against what you've decided, then we obviously got it wrong. We understand that. That's a given. Okay, that's a given. And keep it in mind that someone must win and someone must lose. But I will tell you this much, that there were 5 judges, and it was a 3-2 split. And for many of us, the teams that won by 1/2 of a point. That's how close this debate is. So, first of all, we appreciate the fact that all of these students spoke with confidence and had really good style. We certainly appreciated that. One of the adjudicators, however, does want me to acknowledge the fact that this debate it had time constraints, and that you had a responsibility to work towards the time constraints. If you have 5 minutes, then you really should be finished by 5 minutes and 15 seconds. That doesn't mean that at 5 minutes, 15 seconds, you've got another 20 seconds to kind of close it out. So that, and you really have to deal with that. And I think one positive thing about that is that you're moving on to be able to speak for 8 minutes. That's wonderful. But in this, you had to obey what the times were. As we went through the debate, certain teams began with momentum, and then other teams didn't have as much momentum, and then the momentum kept on shifting until for many of us, at certain points, the momentum was deadlocked. And then it came down to the final speeches, and then it came down to a reevaluation and an assessment on what we as the adjudicators thought were the strong points that pushed it one way or the other. I won't belabor it, and I won't go into the technical reasons about why we kind of thought it. But do know this much, that the students who are standing before us and sitting before us have great potential and are to be commended for a job well done. However, according to the judges, 3 of us saw that it was our opinion, based on the methodology that we used, that the team that has won this debate tonight is Team BHS. I'd like to call Jennifer. I don't know her married name that well.
Thank you. We are now going to very swiftly proceed to present both teams with their prizes. So I'd like to call up the immediate past president of the Bermuda Debate Society, Mr. Tim Smith, who is one of the adjudicators this evening, to help me present these prizes. first of all, we have the runner-up team this evening, Saltus. So if you five could come forward. Sorry, just so I can make it clear for everyone. Keep going, sorry. Just, some of you may be a bit surprised, and I don't think we made it clear why we have 5 students in front of us. And that is because throughout this tournament, we have enabled schools to submit 5 students, and from various round to round, we've had a combination of those 5 being the 3. So it's not just the 3 that you've seen before you at the table debating this evening, but rather the 5 who contributed to the team effort. And they are Jakari Brimmerlandi, Rebecca Dixon, Salala Graham-Hayes, Adam Kiki Charles, and Nicholas Reinheimer. So okay, let's congratulate them. And now to present the winning team with their prizes, Bermuda High School. If you could step forward, please. And again, we have 5 participants on that team: Aliyah Ahad, Anifa Burke, Catherine Campbell, Christy O'Doherty, and Katrin Smith. So let's congratulate them. Don't worry, everybody, we're going to do pictures at the end. And 2 other people who I think deserve a round of applause, but who aren't up on the stage with us at the moment. But we should nonetheless applaud them for all of their hard work and effort towards this, are the 2 coaches of these teams. And for Saltus, that is Christiana Hiles, and for Bermuda. And for Bermuda High School, that is Michelle Carpenter. And I understand as well Mrs. Charlotte Fisher. Thank you. So I'm just going to make a few concluding remarks, and then we can all be on our way. As the president of the Bermuda Debate Society, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to not only those students and coaches that we've just recognized, but to all of the students and their coaches from all of the schools who participated. As I said again, there were 6 schools who participated, and they were Barclay Institute, Bermuda High School, Bermuda Institute, Mount St. Agnes Academy, Saltus Grammar School, and Warwick Academy. So thank you all to them. I'd also like to thank the judges who have volunteered their time. Again, not just the 5 who sat before you this evening, but those who were able to come out and participate in the earlier rounds of debate, many of whom had to get time off work in some instances to get to be there for these debates, which started just after school. So thank you to all of them. Thank you as well, particularly to the new Barclay School and to Saltus Grammar School, who opened their doors to us for the preliminary rounds of these debates. They were both very hospitable, and I think it was an excellent opportunity for not only us, but for particularly some of the students to see what other schools look like on the inside and see what they're like. So we were particularly grateful. And next year, we're going to be looking for other schools to be available. So if you're interested in having your school hosting this event, please feel free to let us know. We next must thank our sponsors of this event, who are listed on the program, but who I'd like to name just to be clear and give them the honor that they deserve. We have the Argus group of companies, Appleby, Attride Sterling and Walleniecki, Conyers Still and Pierman, Butterfield and Vallis, BGA, PricewaterhouseCoopers, A.F. Smith, Christopher Francis Forrest, and the English Sports Shop. So thank you very much to all of them. I would particularly like to thank A.F. Smith, who makes their facilities available to us as an executive committee, not only for our meetings once in a while, but every week. The weekly sessions that are held and run by Trevor Leach, our national coach, are housed in their building, and we greatly appreciate that and their time of having us there. Last but not least, I have to thank and want to thank very much all of the members of the executive committee of the Bermuda Debate Society. It has been your help and your hard work that has made this happen. For many of you that attend a debate tournament, I know because I used to be in them, you sort of think, well, it's a bunch of students sitting behind a couple of tables debating. What's the big deal? Believe me when I say there has been a lot of effort and a lot of work that's gone into this tournament, and without their help, it would not have been possible. So thank you very much to everyone. Thank you all for coming in the audience this evening, and I'd like to declare this debate and this evening now closed. Thank you.